The Fantasmagorium is proud to present Faster, Faster, Faster. In this edition, Tracks, Trophies, and Tailpipes. This is a race car show. We're doing a race car show. There's some explanation to the introduction of the race car show, but I am in the hands of an expert, and I am looking forward to all of these movies because I have not seen a single one of them. So as we knock these down, it is as soon as they've been set up. I am part of the reason that I got on the internet in the first place is so that I could see new things and exciting things. And I think this qualifies across the board. My name is Scotty R37, and Kat is a pit boss. That's not a thing.
Crew chief.
That's it. How are you?
Good.
Okay. So I do have to apologize, but also say, what's the matter you? I announced that we were going to be doing the Star Trek movies. I told people over on Anti-Derivative Jill's channel that we were going to be doing the Star Trek movies. However, this weekend past was a big race. What was it?
The 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yeah. And I was like, there are so many car racing movies that I have not seen. And I would like to fill that gap, that genre. I would like to know, because like some of the movies that we're going to be talking about, and no shade on Ford versus Ferrari, which is the film that we'll be discussing this evening, but like Le Mans and Grand Prix, Days of Thunder, I have never seen. These Gumball Rally. The Gumball Rally, I know more about the history of the Gumball Rally than anything about to do with the movie. And I just saw the trailer and I found out that Raul Julia is in it. Like, these are exciting, action-packed movies that I think are sort of overlooked in action genre.
Yeah, agreed.
And there is also a new movie coming out.
Yes. F1 next week.
Are we going to cover that one?
Of course, in a couple weeks from now.
Nice. Is it filmed in IMAX?
I don't know if it's filmed in IMAX, but it will get an IMAX release for sure. Still there? Still there? Oh, you froze. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, no, I totally froze.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, as long as we're here, and thank you so much for being here if you are. Herc 130. Good to see you, Herc.
Nice, Herc. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of stuff going on the internet tonight. It's Thursday. It's a lovely evening here in Southern Ontario. I'm sure it's great wherever you are. So usually when we start talking about the movies, Kat, I say, when was your first experience with Ford versus Ferrari? But it's a relatively new film.
It is. I saw it at a Studio Movie Girl type movie theater in right down the road here in Rockland in November 2019 when it was released. Saw it with my dad, who used to work for Ford and Shelby.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's rad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but also not to pry, but you also have a little bit of a gearhead, history for yourself.
I do. So it started with my dad, because he worked at Crenshaw Ford in LA, worked in other racing teams. He ended up going into work being a mechanic for air races for a while, and but he likes old cars and stuff. My first car was a 65 Falcon Futura 2-door hardtop. Had it for 13 years. Uh, Fully restored it and everything. I called it my Millennium Falcon, and I even had a Millennium license plate for it before I sold it. But I made sure to keep the plate. Though I really wish my dad didn't sell it because I love that car. We also got he's got a Mustang. He's got a Corvette, and he likes restoring and selling some cars. Not like a business, but like a hobby, as a retirement thing. But we like going to a lot of swap meets all the time, especially if you're into restoring cars. You do that a lot, so we know everybody in the gearhead community and that kind of thing. And I got some couple pictures here, which will be neat to show that are relevant to certain people in this film.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this film is historical representation of actual events.
It's a Hollywood representation of historical events.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Good answer. I don't know much about it. The thing that really, like, first off, I am super jazzed about the cast of the film. And also, I think that they made Lee Iacocca too attractive. Like, John Bernthal as Lee Iacocca, I was like, no, I remember Lee Iacocca. He did not look like John Bernthal. Lee Iacocca famously being, like, wasn't he the president of General Motors?
Well, he also is the one who actually designed the Cobra, and I was surprised they ended up going with Shelby, because Shelby, the patent owned it, but I thought it should have had the Iacocca name on it because that was more of his car than it was Carroll's. But Carroll worked on that one a lot. But Carroll had his own Shelbys and other kind of things that you have aside from your regular Ford Mustangs. You got I know my dad had a GT350 for the longest time. Then there's of course the famous GT500. They still make those. They don't look anything like they did back then, which they don't look as good today as they did back then, but there's still Cobras that are made that you can get. I've been to the Shelby Cobra Manufacturing Center in Las Vegas. It's right across the street from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway on the northeast side of the city. It's pretty cool. They don't let you take cameras in the back because they don't want pictures of people's cars being built ending up online, because they want them to see their car first when it's finished. But they have a room when you first go into the hangar. There's like an enclosed like plywood box or whatever that you step into first, and everybody's got their names signed all over the place. And I wish I had a pen, but I didn't. But then they the last check to make sure you don't have cameras there. Then they open the door and you can go in and look at in the manufacturing center on the tour. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
And the pictures I have here, I'll just bring them up now from the
totes.
The distribution.
You want me to make it big?
Let me see how I do this. I got to present it side. Well, no, they're not physical pictures. I'm gonna pop up another window.
Oh, you're gonna. Oh, okay, yeah, no totes.
Let's see. So okay, so here's. Let me open that. Okay, so
hey,
this is me at the Shelby Cobra Distribution Center near Irvine, California. This photo was taken May 22nd, 2010. What you're looking at there is Carroll Shelby's personal Deuce Coupe Cobra there, of Shelby Mustang there, that he had ordered around 2007, 2008. They tried to talk him out of it because it was a stick shift and he was really old. He didn't listen. He kept it for a month or so and then he gave it back. So this is his personal Shelby right here that I'm outside of and taking pictures. And of course, it wouldn't have been a complete day if I didn't make sure to also, get in the car. In the driver's seat of his own personal car and get pictures taken.
You should have rolled down the window.
It is rolled down. You can kind of tell.
No, but you look like it's different.
And that's my grandfather standing in the back. But yeah, we went there for the day, and they got all sorts of neat cars in there. But they brought that one back. But he gave it back after a couple months or whatever, a few weeks. But I thought, cool, I get to hang out in his actual car. So that was a fun little excursion.
No, for sure. No, that's amazing. And that's what I appreciate that in terms of this. Like, I think most of the movies that we're going to be looking at are well, they're all fictionalized, but this one is the one that sort of holds closest to real events.
Not I mean, depending if you're comparing it against the other movies we're going to review, perhaps, but they did take
Yeah.
a lot of creative liberties. Iacocca was the CEO of Chrysler and Ford. Yes, that's true. Very, very true. Herc 130 also says that he had a 2004 C5 Corvette and a 73 Mustang Mach 1 for your channel. Awesome. So check that out. Formula One is your passion. Great. Everybody loves Formula One. 24 Hours of Le Mans is my jam. I watch it every year. It's fantastic. Kind of watching it in shifts in a way, kind of like the drivers race it in shifts. But yeah. So the movie. When did you first see it, Scott?
Today.
Oh, really?
Like,
you're kidding.
Like as recently as an hour ago.
I thought you would have seen. I kind of saw you would have seen this movie before. It's a great movie.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Ford v Ferrari 4K. I
Yeah.
missed out on the steelbook, unfortunately.
Who is there? Is there an audio commentary?
Is there? I don't think so. No, there's a 8-part making of documentary though.
That I like the making of documentaries. And James Mangold. Like, big ups in terms of crafting a story.
Yeah, he certainly made a story around it. I know that even though the movie's called Ford v Ferrari, it's not really about that because you don't get Ferrari's half of like preparing for the race, and it's not like it was any different for that. Because with Ford, it was like Brave New World because they haven't really done this before. Whereas Ferrari, it was like another year. But as we see in the film, none of Ferrari's 3 cars finished the race that year. A rarity, considering that this year they've won for the 3rd straight year. They finished in the top 4. Well, 3 of the top 4 spots. Porsche got 2nd. So they're dominant. And as the title at the end of the film shows, Ford only went here they're here in 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, and around in 64. And after that, they won 66 through 69, and they never returned to Le Mans after that because they felt they'd achieved what they wanted to, which is marketing the whole youth culture thing and getting people to buy muscle cars. And that was funny because I asked my dad about the scene when Ken Miles chastises the Mustang when it's being revealed for the first time as being this really crappy car. My dad's like, "Yeah, that's kind of true." But the marketing blitz still worked. And I love the bit when Iacocca's making the pitch about, he's like, guys, yeah, nobody wants to drive the cars their parents did in the 50s. James Bond doesn't drive a Ford. And Henry's like, well, it's because James Bond's a degenerate.
I thought that was pretty funny too.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, but also like I like these period specific dramas because of, I don't know, differing viewpoints on something that's been idealized for a while. Like, I love Mad Men, and when I see advertising people in movies, I just think of Don Draper and whatnot. And with this, it was like, oh yeah, no, I guess Henry Ford II would be a prude. It is appropriate, like more of a businessman than, and I think that is what is most effective about Ferrari's insult at the beginning. And it's like, well, you are not Henry Ford. You are Henry Ford II, or is it John Ford? I forget.
Henry Ford II, but that's funny because of course, Lee Iacocca didn't personally go to Italy for that exchange. That was Don Fry, and it wasn't a photographer who raced over to Fiat, even though they did conspire to boost up the price. It turns out that a guy with Ford who was with Don Fry said that in the movie, that is literally what Ferrari said, and Ferrari's guys standing there were shocked because they had never heard him say something that rude or demeaning about anybody ever before working for him over the past 40 years. But everything he said was just about a direct quote. However, Henry Ford did not say the racist shit. He said the most. He said, we're going to beat his ass at Le Mans. He didn't say we're going to bury the, blah, blah, blah at the finish line.
What was the quote?
He's like, we're going to, what, Henry's?
No, Ferrari's.
Oh, he says, tell him that he makes ugly little cars and ugly little factories, and that all of his executives are sons of whores, and that he's a fat, pig-headed man, and and the big one is you're not Henry Ford. You're Henry Ford II.
Yeah.
which even hits harder because it's like, he's the grandson of Henry Ford. But then again, maybe it's good not to be as associated with Henry Ford because he was a super, big into the Nazi shit. And so maybe one separate.
Well, you know what? Before the end of World War, before it ended, you could have picked your sides, whatever you want to do. But the more I hear about this Hitler guy, the more I'm disassociated. I just think he's not that good.
Oh yeah, really. But Henry Ford II was actually the son of Edsel Ford, and Edsel died of cancer in 1943 at age 49, and his father Henry Ford took over the company then again for 2 years other people had to run it because he was really old by then and not really as with it, and so Henry Ford II took over in 1945, and then Henry Ford I died in April 1947, April 7th, I believe it was, and then. Henry Ford II kept kicking to 87, but you get what Ferrari means by that because the movie's talking about how Ford, what is it, Leo Beebe, the character who gets vilified quite a lot in this movie, perhaps in an unwarranted way.
Is that Josh Lucas?
Yes, and he's like, we make more cars in a day than Ferrari makes in a year, and Lee's like, it doesn't matter. Ferrari's not in this for production value or money. He's in it because he's obsessed with winning and perfecting the car. And he says Enzo Ferrari will go down as the greatest builder of cars in history. Like it's an art and a passion for him. But of course, it did nearly drive him to bankruptcy. And it's funny, the Ferrari movie talks about that as well. They were facing bankruptcy issues even years before that in 1957.
And when you say the Ferrari movie, you're referring to the
one by
Adam
Michael
Driver?
Mann. Yeah, the Adam Driver one with Michael Mann. They were talking about so they were in financial trouble for a while, but it's just the idea that Ferrari is all about racing and the art of racing and racing culture. Whereas the reason he insults Henry Ford is saying, you make ugly cars in ugly factories is because Henry Ford II is much like his father Edsel Ford, much like Henry Ford I, which is Fordism. Everything's about consumerism, and that's much better, and it's going to bring world peace. And that's why Aldous Huxley had Ford be the cult-like religion in Brave New World from 1932, where all the crucifixes have been replaced with T's for Model T's, and they have, instead of saying my Lord, they say my Ford and all that type of stuff that was in the book. But Ferrari's right. It was for Ford. It was always about consumerism. That's why after they won Le Mans 4 years in a row, they never bothered coming back because they never cared about it. For them, it was just a business tactic, a marketing tool.
Oh yeah, no, it was totally double-page spreads in Time magazine.
Yes, and you didn't have it, like the final title says, no American car has won Le Mans since then. Because Henry Ford did take the insult personally. He did throw all his money, or a lot of it. I heard various accounts, like the movie says 9 million. He said it was around 3 million, so I'm not really sure exactly on the math. But they spent a hell of a lot of money, and they got what they wanted out of it.
Herc in the chat says Leo Beebe was misrepresented big time in this movie, but the writers needed that antagonist. I editorialized Herc.
Yeah, it's true that that he wanted Ken to slow down in a couple races, but that was because of justified fears of blowing the engines. Because even at Le Mans that year, a lot of the other cars from the better teams who'd been doing it for years were not finishing and blowing their engines because they're pushing way too hard. But there was any type of, and it is true that he didn't really like Ken for the lead spokesman. He preferred someone like Bruce McLaren and Chris Amon and those guys, but he didn't sabotage Ford's efforts or have any type of vendetta against Ken. And he certainly didn't bar Ken from going to the 65 Le Mans at the last second, because Ken did go to the 65 Le Mans and was a part of one of Shelby's 4 racing teams in the 65 race, and they blew their gearbox at like 45 laps in, so pretty early. But the movie does overview, and he didn't tell him to make a sign to go tell Ken to slow down at the 12 hours, the 24 hours on or Sebring, whatever it was. And Carroll Shelby did not walk out on the racetrack holding up a sign, 7,000 RPM, go like hell. He did want him to go.
Oh, come on. I love that part.
Well, Leo did, again, want him to go slower because he doesn't want him blowing the engine because they're spending a lot of money on that stuff. And one of the most ridiculous fictions that even in the first viewing of the movie that I kind of did, I'm like, what? Is when Carroll takes Henry for a ride in the car on the runway. And he says, look, if we don't win this, you get Shelby. you get it in perpetuity. I'm like, no, he did not bet his entire future of his company and everything on Ken. That's another fabrication for the film. But you know,
Well,
it's
and I
Hollywood.
thought, yeah, like I appreciated the impact of that scene, but I also thought that that was just sort of a nut flex scene. I didn't expect that actually. I don't think that Henry Ford II broke down crying.
Well, I don't know if he took him for a ride in the car either. They might have just,
Yeah.
done that for the movie.
Like, no,
But
it
it
just
is
seemed like I understood the emotion that they were trying to convey. I understood that the triumph that they were trying to force down the mouth of the executive. And I thought it was dramatically satisfying. But when it's kind of it's a difficult thing when you're watching something that is supposedly based on true events. And I was like, this never happened. Like, you're lying. So
Herc says Carol did fly B-29s as an instructor during World War II. Yeah, my
oh yeah,
grandfather.
no, that was rad. I believed that when he lands
Yeah.
the plane, that was fucking awesome.
My other grandfather was actually B-29 navigator to China, Burma, India theater in World War II. I still got that picture. But yeah, and then it's funny because the ending of the race is the one that's most controversial because depending on what source you read, they're completely different opinions on what actually happened. Either they finished in a dead heat and that rule was put into effect where it's like, well, they started further back and so they raced longer and they win. Others say that Bruce actually accelerated at the last second another 3 feet or 10 feet or whatever to cross the finish line first to make sure he won regardless. So, but that's the thing. It depends on who you ask. And it's frankly ridiculous that because supposedly Leo Beebe didn't know about the rule about the distance thing about if you start later, you have more that if it's a tie, the tiebreaker is whoever raced more mileage. And it's like, well, the team manager should know that information. And the idea that Ford didn't know, then they didn't find that out apparently until 45 minutes before the end of the race, but there was nothing they could do because of course they didn't have team radios back then.
Right.
So they couldn't really do anything about it then. So and the movie obviously tries to make it seem like Leo's motivation for the 1-2-3 finish isn't so much a marketing ploy as it is him being vindictive against Ken as if he already knew about the distance rule. But it is a great marketing.
I didn't get that sense, and it is something. Like, I understand the pride, but
Yeah.
I think the movie does balance those three characters very, very well when it's Carol, BB, and Miles. And it's like, we have to do this for the company. And Carol is it's like, oh, you fucking son of a bitch. I knew this was going to happen. You're going to be all company on me. And then he goes to talk to Miles. And it's
apparently
like,
what Miles actually said is, I think I've been right, or I think I've been proper fucked. That's what he actually said.
That makes sense.
He was actually angry. In the movie, it makes it seem very humble.
The release of Miles to be in control of the car, and whether, I don't care how it happened in real life, I enjoy the drama of the situation. Is that I do like that moment when he looks in the rear view mirror and no one is behind him.
Yeah,
and he's like,
and they did set a lot of speed records there. However, when Carol was talking to Lee about how, oh, you've ever done this race, you got to go 200 miles an hour. It's like, actually, the top speed was back then was like 142 miles an hour that race. The average speed for the winner, Bruce McLaren, was 125. But it is said from other sources that there was 218 miles an hour for the year before when they didn't win. When Henry Ford's really upset and he brings Shelby into the office. And he's like, well, you know what? We have Ferrari right where we want him because he saw something he'd never seen before. He saw Ford going 218 miles an hour down the same straight. And it's like, that wasn't listed in the official practice or official fastest lap results. Fastest lap of that year was 187. So unless it was, but there are other sources who say it was. So it's kind of a murky area there. But it still was, regardless, they did have the fastest time and it did put Enzo on his toes. that, oh shit. Because today the average speed of Le Mans is like 210, 215. But back then those cars just weren't as fast.
Well, and speaking of the speed of the cars, like one of my favorite things about racing movies is hearing about the engineering of the cars themselves, and this one does it really well without getting bogged down in technicalities. Like it's like it is a kinetic expository pit crew, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, did you find it to be true to life? Did you find it to be not only for the layman, but also for the person who knows what they're talking about?
Well, yeah, like the instance where they taped all the string to the car so they could see where the drag is when they're driving around the track. Like that was real. There wasn't any antagonism, however, between Shelby and Ford's guys during that scene or stuff like that. They did very much closely work together because, again, Ford threw in millions of dollars for this, so and he told them, trust these guys, they know what they're doing. So so there was a lot more cooperation there. But also when Shelby brought that car over for Ken to drive at night, he's like, "I'll be back in half an hour," and he drives around and he's listing all the problems with the car. He's like, "Good, that's what we thought so too," and so it does that. Those are the types of things that they do when they're filling out the car and driving it around. Like at the end of the movie, when somebody buys a car and he's like, "Oh, I can really feel it," blah blah blah, and Carol mutters to himself, "You only drive it for an hour. You don't know shit about this car."
Yeah,
and which is true because a lot of the people who buy it, they buy it for status symbols. They don't really know anything about the car, how to race it. Like like the idiot in the beginning who goes to Ken's auto shop and is complaining about the performance of his car, and he's like, in America they always say the customer is always right, and it's like, I kind of wanted Ken to respond, that is actually a policy which employees will use when they have unreasonable customers they're dealing with, just to get them out of the business as quickly as possible.
Well, and the thing is, and I like to dispel this rumor as much as possible whenever I have the opportunity. The customer is not always right.
Right.
And the reason for that is, as a person who has been responsibly serving alcohol for most of their professional life, if the customer were always right, I wouldn't be able to cut off a drunk person. And so therein lies the rule. The customer is not always right. Make the customer feel right. But usually this job would be great if it weren't for the customers.
Herc says, anytime Ken explains the racer cars to his son, it's really for the audience. Absolutely. That's just to, get that down so the audience understands what's going on. And he follows it up, also says that Ray McKinnon's portrayal of Phil Remington was very good to fill the story out. Agreed. Because, that was another good portrayal in that film.
I got to see who Ray McKinnon is. Because if he's the same guy that I think it is, then I agree. If it's not, then
he's the tall, skinny guy with the mustache who works with Shelby.
Yeah. No, he was absolutely great. Where have I seen him before?
I've seen him in all sorts of things. Like,
he's that guy.
Yeah, he's that guy. He's like, oh, it's that guy. Yeah. I like the bit in the beginning where he's like, Carol, you sold that car to 2 other people already, including Steve McQueen. He's like, oh God, take the money, but don't let him leave with the car. It's like, we'll figure that out later.
But he does hold it together. He is like, I like seeing actors that are like, he's almost like Tim Blake Nelson-ish.
I don't see him around very much.
Oh no, he was recently in the new Captain America movie. It's
right,
great.
But I meant I don't see him around much in general. I see Ray McKinnon a lot. I also thought that the actor Noah Jupe, who plays the son Peter, I think was a couple of years too young, because I think Peter at the time of the events of the movie would be 15 or 16. That kid looked more like maybe 12 or 13 or something.
Okay, so this is Mangold, right?
Yes.
When is this, before or after Logan?
After.
Okay, so he's still trying to cash in on directing child actors. Same way he did with Daphne Keane in Logan. He's doing it with this young lad.
I did
And I
like.
think he does a good job. Like, I don't want to knock the kid.
Yeah. I did like the movie. Ken is portrayed pretty accurately too by Christian Bale. Very much kind of a maverick kind of guy, not really a company man. And Carol having to rein that in or whatever. So that was a bit accurate. Um, and then it is true that Carol had to retire from racing early because of his heart ailment. Like his
Yeah.
buddy asked him in the beginning, "Do you miss it?" And he just kind of ignores, doesn't want to acknowledge the question, which is probably why he takes Henry out in the car. Also, he wants to race the thing around the track. It's funny because the raceway they're at in the end of this movie, the one where Ken gets killed at, that was just 2 months after Le Mans. That was Riverside International Raceway. It doesn't exist anymore. But we will be seeing the real Riverside International Raceway as a filming location for a Grand Prix later in this review series, which will be fun.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, Riverside International Raceway suffered the same fate as a lot of raceways back then, which is that even though they were there first and decades in advance, once the city started encroaching on the territory, people started complaining about the noise and the noise pollution, and then the environmentalists were complaining about all the dirt and the ash and the rubber and the toxic fume from the racetrack spilling into the neighborhoods.
Bunch of slack-jawed hippies.
Exactly, and so it's gone, and there's literally no trace of Phil. It's been replaced by a shopping mall and housing developments where Riverside Racetrack was, just like Ascot and Gardena, gone. But I can go on forever about lost speedways. I'm kind of into that as well.
But that's the whole reason that we're doing this, Kat. You can talk about whatever the hell you want. Cars. Diesel. Let's get her done.
Herc says McKinnon was in Oh Brother Where Art Thou as the new boyfriend to Holly Hunter, and he was in Deadwood as the preacher. Yes, that's right. I forgot about that. Another funny thing I know about Riverside Raceway is that a lot of people actually died on that track because of the same corner that Ken died in. Because when you're going down that track at top speeds, with Ken was driving a honeycomb car at that time, and that picks up a lot, like hydroplaning, and the air gets underneath it and flips the cars. But it's funny, when they first opened that track the weekend of September 22nd, 1957, in the first race, a driver was killed because he went off the track and they didn't have any safe barriers, and he just rolled and cartwheeled. And then the final race was July 1st, the weekend July 1st, 2nd, 1989, and a driver was killed then too. So it ended and began the same way. But that's part of racing. Like Bruce McLaren, for instance, he's famous obviously for McLaren. That sports car company, obviously big and racing team today, very huge.
I've heard of it.
He sadly was killed age 32 in 1970 driving down on the Goodwin track in England, driving down the length straightaway, and that didn't work out. So a lot of the characters and stuff you see in this movie, there's a lot of
didn't work out.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers who had short careers back then. It was very dangerous. That's part of the reason why Richard Petty was called the king for NASCAR. Be as many races as he was in back when it was so unsafe, and to come out. It's like, granted, those cars were going slower, but still. He says they used Willow Springs for Riverside. Yes, they did. Willow Springs is near Edwards Air Force Base, still is, where I was stationed. Nice. I have done laps there on my motor. Ooh, nice. That is fun. I haven't been to Willow Springs. I would love to go there and do that. I have been to Sears Point in August 2010. They had an event there for Tigers and other types of sports cars, and you could drive it on the racetrack. They had an official race there. We weren't in the race, but if you had a car that you brought the classic, you were allowed to do little demonstration laps around the track, so that was fun. Sears Point being now it's called Sonoma Raceway, but everybody up here still calls it Sears Point. Herc says Riverside had a stupid solid wall on one turn that was built into the hill. Terrible track. Yeah, for a long time it was considered a really good track, and then turn 9, which is the one on the south end, ended up getting redesigned at one point to increase the embankment to help slow down, so the cars wouldn't have to rely on the brakes, because a lot of cars' brakes would go out down there because they were hitting them too hard. But you're right, there was the solid wall got put in because of that accident that I spoke of in the beginning, and there were a lot of accidents and a lot of deaths there, so maybe it was a good thing that they closed the track. So. But getting back to the movie, it has a pretty good pace. It's 2.5 hours long. Doesn't feel like it to me.
But it's a journey movie. Like, it's kind of like that. You start at the beginning, and there's the statement of intent of the film, and you know that we have to win Le Mans, and then you just go. Like, I did step away from the movie twice because it is 2.5 hours. And I did step away, but that's also because I'm a chain smoker. So yeah, and so yeah, no, I watched it, and it was, it feels great to watch. It doesn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
I would have watched this in theaters happily.
Well, I like that part of what keeps it going is the dynamic between Carol and Ken, is that even though they're friends and they respect each other a lot, they kind of have this constant sparring back and forth because Ken doesn't understand all the corporate side that Carol has to deal with. And then you have, of course, Ken's wife Molly, who is upset with him.
She's great.
She
What's
is.
the name of that actress?
She's like, the IRS has locked up the garage. You need to give up this hobby, and he almost does it. And he's throwing out his trophies, and his son Peter saves the trophies. And then I love the part where she's in the station wagon and she starts driving recklessly with it. And he's like, slow down, slow down. She's getting pissed off at him. You didn't tell Mama. And he's like, well, he's going to pay me $200 a day, which back then was like the equivalent of $1,650 a day. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, then what do you mean you're crazy? You're still thinking about it? Do it.
No, I thought, and that's the thing is it does properly represent the relationships between all the characters. It makes them three-dimensional and real. I guess that Carol is kind of short shrift. Like, they give a little bit more characterization to Ken, but that is also because, spoilers for real life, like Ken, like, I was like halfway through the movie, I was like, oh no, Ken's gonna die. Like, I didn't know this real history. And I was like, oh, when's he gonna die? When's he gonna die? And then when he died, I was like, oh, that's sad. But I knew.
Well, another reason they make Ken the main character is, being the maverick type of guy. They think it's going to be appealing to people, the underdog, which is why they go out of their way to vilify Leo Beebe. And obviously, Beebe's still a villain, because the idea that anybody would try and interfere in the race, saying, let's manipulate the end of the race for a photo finish. No, you don't fucking manipulate the end of a race where you're averaging 150 miles an hour for a little.
What are you talking about? I thought that was believable.
No, I didn't say it wasn't believable. He did do that. He did request and demand that they do that. But it's like, no, you don't interrupt a race to tell your drivers to start fucking around just so you could get a picture. You don't do that shit. And
you do.
No, you don't. You don't. That is the only time.
Did they?
Scott, that is literally the only time that has ever happened at Le Mans. The only time.
But they did that.
That's why I said that is literally the only time it happens, and you don't do that. That's why he's a villain.
But you can.
But nobody has ever done it before or since, ever.
Except for that guy.
Yeah, except for that guy, which is why he's justifiably
so it's been
still
done
in the movie.
So it has been done.
Which is why he's a villain.
Well, no, antagonist, not a villain. And the reason that I found it as such, no, but the reason I found it as such was, it was, if you are in first place threefold, then why not gloat about it and make a photo op? That is the executive publicity department. It's the entire reason that Ford was there in the first place.
I'll tell you why. Because each of those drivers was achieving a particular medium that they were on. Like, they had a rhythm that they were racing on. You don't start fucking with the rhythm and the groove they found themselves in, because they start slowing down. That's going to create problems. You're going to encounter other lap traffic that all the three cars are going to fight to get around and stuff like that.
But it worked.
Let each individual car do what it's doing. Do not tell them. Don't mess with somebody's mojo when they're cruising along, like setting all these records and say, "Oh, we need you to slow down now." It's like, unless there is a legit fear that they're about to blow the engine or something, then don't start saying we have to slow everything down and wait for other people to catch up to the line. No. That's something you still shouldn't do. It's clearly a corporate marketing decision. And it is the reason
yeah, of course,
why after Ford left, they never came back, because they don't care about the race.
Well, and that I thought that was a cute sort of observation from Ferrari. It's like the owner of Ford is leaving the racetrack in a helicopter.
Yeah,
And
and
it's like,
further validating his
leave in a
point.
fucking car, you fuck. Anyway, sorry about the swears.
Yes, Lemon Pie says, surely this movie runs high on the patented cat hot pepper scale. Yeah. And that was funny because when Phil Remington's like,
Well,
one
no,
of the guys,
Kat, where do you put this? Like, what
well, we're
out
not
of
rating it
out
yet.
of?
We're not rating it yet. We're not
No,
done.
I'm just asking you. Lemon's asking. So, like out of 10, what do you got?
I'm not sure yet. I will get to it when we finish talking about it. I won't
All
forget.
right, sounds good. Sounds good.
And it's funny because Phil's like, maybe he's leaving in the helicopter to go out to some nice place to dinner, and Remington's like, what do you mean? What do you mean probably? It's like, of course that's where he's going. Which is I thought that was kind of funny. But the movie does have that bit where probably not true, or where Ferrari tips his hat to Ken for setting all those records.
I liked that.
I did like that.
What, you didn't like that?
No, I said I did like that.
Okay.
I did like that. I don't know if that was true.
Probably not.
And if that were me, if I got screwed out of the race, yeah, that's going to hurt. But if I get a tip from the hat from Enzo Ferrari for my performance, that's going to be a big fucking win.
I don't really care for Italians.
I did like that part in the race. It was kind of funny when Carroll steals the stopwatch from the Ferrari team. He's like, "Yeah, it's a nice one. They're Italian."
Kat, for the record, that was a joke. I am very affectionate towards the Italian people.
And then later, when Carroll throws the nut down to make him think that they didn't bolt the tires on all the way.
I thought that was awesome.
That was awesome.
For a second, I was like, you know what? I should get a job as a pit crew. Because I know how to throw nuts. So.
That was pretty funny, I thought. But it is true that Shelby set him up with a warehouse at LAX, which wasn't as big of an airport as it is today. So they had plenty of extra space on the disused runways from World War II to put out all the cones to simulate the shape of and have them race for whatever racetrack they're training for, even though it didn't have the embankments or the uphill downhill. Because of course Le Mans is not a regular course; it's like a country roads that once a year they bring in all the race demarcations and barriers and put that up to make it, a racetrack, and then the rest of the year, kind of like Monaco Grand Prix, it's just a regular road.
Same deal with what is it? There's a F1 in Toronto, I think.
There's a lot more street courses now. Yes, they've been adding those a lot for F1 and IndyCar, and even NASCAR is starting to do road courses. It's something that's catching on again, or street races, I should say.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I should really have you've been to races?
Not that I've been to Altamont Speedway. That was the first race I went to.
Okay.
That was
did the Hells Angels do security?
No, but I think the circumstances being what they were, they did a good job at that incident. And if you have somebody charging the stage with a gun, it's like you got a second to decide if they're a psycho gonna jump up there and kill the guys on stage with the guitars.
I think we're mixing our references, and I did it, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's a whole other story that I think got blown.
I know. I'm sorry.
I mean, they never should have held a concert there anyway. Because I've been to that race, and that racetrack is really small. Doesn't have that much accommodation in terms of the
acoustics are shit.
Yeah, and you can see it just a little bit off the freeway when you're driving to Tracy. But yeah, I went there for like little go-kart racing and some other little stock car race. They did multiple little races there. That had to be almost 25 years ago, probably now.
You were 10.
Probably, yeah. Herc says, I go to Circuit of the Americas in Austin all the time. Great track. It is, especially when the IndyCar stuff races there. I'm admittedly not as much a fan of that track when NASCAR goes there because there's not as much competition. But the IndyCar races, that's awesome. That is awesome when you see that on the Circuit of the Americas. And I'm sure it's really fun to go to those types of racetracks. I went to the Daytona 500 in 2011, and that was pretty awesome. I was at the entrance, a little past the entrance of pit road, about 33 rows up, which is just above what I would consider the sound barrier, where it's not deafening, and you can actually be high enough that you can see the cars passing in front of you because the wall isn't blocking the view. So that was pretty cool. And man, the TV does not do justice to the like. You have no sense of the speed when you're watching on TV versus when you're actually there. It is exciting. It's a thrill.
Kat, can I excuse myself for just 1 second? I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
I promise. Yeah, I'm going to be double plus quick.
Okay. While Scotty goes to get whatever it is he's going to get, let's see what. Yes, Herc says, well put, Scotty. It didn't overstay its welcome like Blade Runner 2049. You know, I didn't mind 2049. There's certain elements of the story I didn't care for. I thought it was a little oversimplified. But it's almost like when you go to a museum and you see like a bench that's in front of a random painting, and it's like, why do they have a bench in front of this one and not the other ones? And you sit there and you stare at it, and it's like you're entranced and just staring at it. It's really relaxing. That's kind of how I view 2049. It's like this, the production design and the colors and the music and the sound effects. It's like a really relaxing, kind of interesting museum piece to watch. And welcome back, Scotty. Yes, he was praising. Herc was praising your point that the movie didn't overstay its welcome, like Blade Runner 2049 did. He says.
Oh, but come on, that's a story for a different day.
Yeah, I was talking a bit about that, but yeah. So I admit I haven't been to as many racetracks as I would have liked to go to. There is a dirt track literally like a mile from my house, and every Friday in the summers they have what's called Fast Fridays, where they got little dirt bikes racing around that. So that's really fun.
Well, do you drive?
I mean, I have a driver's license, but I don't have a car anymore, and I don't really drive that much now.
If you were to have a car,
yeah,
what car would it be on what track?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question. Like if you're talking about like for
it's a big question. I'm not saying it's an easy one.
Well, I mean, if you're talking the modern age, I want a Ferrari because they're really like the Ferraris on the race car. They dominate a lot of these. They're pretty good. I would admittedly love to, because I've seen one of these Ford Machs at a museum because they've been restored since the race, and that would be really cool to be able to race in one of those at those tracks. Because again, back in the day, the speeds were very different and the capabilities were very different. Like for instance, James Dean's car, the Porsche Spyder 550 that he crashed, it only had a 4-cylinder engine. Compare that to as a race car. It still got up to 100, but it was still only 4 cylinders, so you couldn't really push that very far. But that was a big deal in 1955.
Wait. How did he die?
He got killed in Blood Alley, which was a nickname for the stretch of road in Central California where Highway 41 and Highway 46 meet.
Yeah.
And they allow people to cross over into the line of traffic if they want to turn onto the adjacent highway coming from the other direction. And they also allow people coming off the other highway to do kind of a turn in the same way. Horribly designed intersection, but the thinking at the time was that there was not much traffic, so it didn't matter. But they've redesigned it a couple times, and they've literally just completed a massive Caltrans project where none of those intersections will cross ever again because they've built overpasses to bypass them, so no more crashes. But they had, like, to put in perspective, they had 54 deaths at that same intersection in the 1990s alone. And what happened basically when he was driving his Spyder, witnesses say he was weaving out of the lane of traffic to pass other cars, which was not legal because there was only one lane in one direction.
I don't care about legal.
But I'm just
curious if he was a good driver, and apparently not.
Well, he finished third, and his other buddy second at a race early in '55 that Ken Miles actually raced, and Ken Miles won that race. But Ken got disqualified because of a technicality, which bumped Dean up to second and another guy up to first. But yes, Dean's car got hit by a Ford Tudor, which was crossing the road at sunset. And he did not see the low-lying silver car because at sunset, when the sun's setting behind you, it creates these sometimes, like when you see the heat rising off the road, it creates these glares, and he couldn't distinguish the car from a glare, so he hit it. And a steel Ford Tudor hitting an aluminum race car. Like Doc Brown says in Back to the Future 2, and Marty says, "Can't we just land on Biff's car?" He's like, "Marty, this is an 82 DeLorean. That's a 46 Ford Tudor. It'll peel through us like a tin can." Yeah. So that's that.
So anyway, back to the original question: what car would you drive on whatever course of your choice?
No, I would love to race on the an F1 car on Indy, or an Indy car on the Indy 500.
You'd say
the Indianapolis 500, I should say. That's the Indy car. That would be really fun to race an IndyCar for that. Get to the history and everything there, or also F1 in Monaco. I mean, I know Monaco's kind of a you don't really call it a race because it's kind of like if you qualify in first, you're going to win because there's no way to really pass anybody. So unless you have mechanical problems or whatever, and then there's no real reason why you're going to lose if you qualify first. But it's like the prestige of winning at Monaco, and you get presented the trophies by literal royalty, and the prestige of it and the iconography. So I'd love to race Monaco or in Indy 5 in an F1 car, or the Indy 500 in an Indy car, or the Le Mans race in one of those back in the 60s Le Mans race with a Ford GT. That would be
now. And also, do you know how to drive standard like manual transmission?
I have not driven manual yet. No, because my car, it was a Falcon, but it was already
son of a bitch.
Well, the Falcon I had was already automatic. We didn't turn it into an automatic; it just always was one, and I didn't drive that, but I could always learn. Herc says James Dean's Porsche had the race number 130 on it. Coincidence? Coincidence to what? I must have missed it. Wait, 130 for Herc 130, right? Herc, yes, maybe it is. I know Al Guinness made a prediction a week earlier when James showed him the car, and he says, "Son, you get in that car, you're going to be dead within a week." And Ursula Andress backed that up. She was Dean's girlfriend at the time, future Bond girl, of course, and she said, "Yeah, I did say that." So that's crazy. So those would be the top three tracks I would want to race: Indy, Monaco, and Indy in an Indy car, Monaco in an F1 car, and Le Mans in the Ford GT in the 60s Le
Mans. See, I'm not a car guy. Because all I would think of is like, I want to drive a DeLorean. I want to drive Magnum, the Magnum PI car.
Mm.
I don't know. I'm not. I really enjoy. Like, I don't like sports, but I do consider race car driving to be a sport. I think it is physically exhausting.
It is. It's the most physically demanding sport ever.
Let's not.
They have brought, it's funny because NASCAR even does this sometimes when they hear other people like basketball players and stuff say, "Oh, this is crap," they invite them in. It's like, "Here, you want to ride with us?" I'm like, "Okay." And they take them a few laps at top speed around, and they can't believe how exhausted they are after just a few laps of just sitting in the car, not even driving it. And that was part of what got even Michael Jordan into NASCAR, because he was kind of thinking that, and they gave him for a few rides. He's like, "Oh shit, this is amazing!" And granted, that's just NASCAR, which is not as prestigious as Indy and F1, obviously, but sure. But it does put extreme strain on you, and sometimes certain racers, even Kyle Busch, a notoriously successful NASCAR driver, he get out of a race a couple times and have to have like an IV because they're just so dehydrated, because it's just such an intense. And that's even when you have the fan pumping in cool air inside your helmet. But yeah, it's a very physically demanding sport. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, and I think that, and it's interesting that when we said we were going to be talking about it, I think the first comment on the video was 70,000 RPMs.
70,000?
Is that what it is?
Well, the movie was 7,000.
7,000 RPMs. And I was like, okay, I guess. And then I watched the movie, and there is sort of that, they do talk about the I hate to say spiritual nature of hitting 7,000 RPMs, and then you don't feel the vehicle anymore. It's just you with a superpower. And I've always felt that way, even just driving a car regularly on any highway. And it's like, this is a superpower. Humans do not get to go 60 miles per hour unless they have assistance mechanically. And I like that idea, and I don't know what 7,000 RPMs is. Like sometimes I have recently gone 88 miles per hour. And it does, it's just like, this is something that is overwhelming. The power the speed, the ability to do that in this machine is invigorating. And to be able to compete with it makes it like it's it I when I watch a racing movie, and I've seen a couple, not the ones that we're talking about, but I've seen a couple, and it fills me with like anytime that there's that change of gear, that acceleration, the sound of an engine in these movies, in racing movies, it fills me with joy.
And you're right. Once you hit a certain type of speed going in that car and you're used to it, it's not going to feel as weighty anymore. Especially once you start getting past the resistance of it. Sort of like when you take off an airplane, it feels, even as a passenger sitting on like an Airbus or whatever, it feels a lot more tense or whatever when you're taking off because you're accelerating to get past all that force. But once you get in the groove, it's like, even though you're still feeling just as much hit with as much air force, it doesn't feel, aerodynamically as big of a thing. Yeah, and then it comes down to not just the drivers but the skill of the cars. Like, how much money does a car have the teams have to contribute? Kind of like when you see drivers in NASCAR will not only compete in the top tier series, which is the Cup Series, but they'll compete in the junior division, which is Xfinity. And it's like, you have more money than those other teams, so of course you're gonna, your numbers are gonna be better because you have better engines. It's sort of like an F1 when you had Lewis Hamilton winning for the longest time, which really hurt the ratings a bit because it's not that the other drivers suddenly forgot how to win. It's because of various factors, the teams weren't investing as much money. They weren't able to, the engines weren't there to compete. So, Lewis's popular kind of shoots up, and then eventually the other teams got their shit together, and then now it's a bit more of an even field. But you see how kind of the viewership migrates between the sports, which is interesting based on how competitive it is. Of course, I prefer F1 to Indy, but they're all both really fun to watch.
Yeah, but that's because you're gay.
Of course, we had to have Scott doing some shock jock type shit.
What? Come on! It's 90% of the reason that I'm here.
Yes, I know it is. So I think the movie is still really fun. I like the back and forth. It makes all the car stuff palpable for people who don't really know about cars. It doesn't seem to dumb things down too much. Yeah, they play fast and loose with the facts for the sake of heightening the drama, but it still makes for a good movie. My understanding is the only people who were upset about it were the friends and family of Leo Beebe. Understandably. But he was...
Yeah, but it's not as... It's not as bad as that guy who killed himself on the Titanic.
What?
Remember the guy? There was the guy on in the movie Titanic, and he shoots himself in the head, and the family was like, "That never happened. Why did you misrepresent?" And so
I think they got that information because it was known that something happened at his district, at his division there. Something bad that the others, even though the others didn't end up surviving that night, they took an oath of silence. Charles Lightoller confirmed that something did in fact happen over there, something bad, but he refused to say what it was. And he was the most senior officer to survive the disaster, the one who wasn't loading the boats to capacity, who ironically lived. So something happened. I don't know. And they something grave happened. They wouldn't say what it was, so we're never really going to know the answer. But yeah, you're right. There was backlash about that.
But that's the thing, is that when you are dramatizing something and you're trying to make a villain, or you're trying to make a dramatic point, or even just a beat in the face of historical fact, yeah, you're gonna do it.
Also felt like that also felt like a bit of a Romeo and Juliet thing in Titanic. Not only are they doing that between her family and his being the third class, all that kind of thing, but the guy Murdoch, he seems to have a friendly back and forth with Rose, kind of like in Romeo and Juliet. Her cousin Tybalt has a friendly back and forth with her, and what do you know? He shoots the Italian friend of the Romeo character.
Fabrizio!
Exactly. So it's like, hey, there's a little bit of a parallel there with Romeo and Juliet, extra parallels. But we're getting off track.
Yeah, no, we should totally get back on track. Don't forget to join us next week when we review Titanic.
How to make $1 million in car racing. Start with 2 yes, and then and see that go away depending on what your expectations are.
Well, but I loved that. I loved that at the beginning, and at that being the mission statement of Ford. It
Mhm.
was Ferrari has spent all of their money in being the best car manufacturer in the world, and they succeeded, and they are broke. And it was like when you start the story with your rival is already like busted.
Yeah, and yet the
I
rival's the better guy at being able to build the cars and known for that.
well, it's well, and I was thinking about it while the movie was playing is Ford versus Ferrari. And when I think of Ferrari, I do think of an artisanal uh,
Mhm.
boutique car company. Yes, they make less cars in a year than Ford does in a day. Like when I think of Lee Iacocca, I think of the K car.
Mm.
By the way, I've had sex in a K car. And like I just think of these like and the most beautiful car in the world going against a consumer off the factory line consumer product.
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating. And for a for engineers and for I hate to say drivers, I want to say pilots of these land vehicles. It's impressive. And the movies that come out of them are about passion and knowledge, brilliance, and like I've always been a big advocate of people doing their jobs. And this movie, if this is evident of what we're going to be seeing soon with the rest of the movies, like these are rad. This is rad.
well, this movie also won the Oscars for best film editing and best sound editing.
Fucking A.
Also nominated for best picture. Um,
Nominated.
Nominated, and then it was nominated for. There was one more that it got nominated for. Let's see, what was that? It also got
Razzie.
no, it got nominated for sound mixing, but that doesn't really mean anything because
No,
as the
it
sound.
means
No, no,
something.
no.
Don't
I'll tell you what I mean by this.
diminish.
Yeah, here's the thing: the
Yeah.
Academy consulted the sound, the guild for those guys. They said that there's no reason to have sound editing and mixing as two separate things because the sound editors and sound mixers literally work together in the same room on the same motherboard. And so to say that a movie has the best sound editing, by definition, the sound mixer should have already gotten an Oscar anyway, and vice versa. And so they approved the Academy's decision to reduce it from sound editing and sound mixing to just one Oscar, best sound, which makes a lot more sense. So my point is, because Academy voters don't really know all the technical shit, they think, oh, sound editing, that's great. Well, if you give it for sound editing, by definition, you should be giving it for sound mixing. So in a sense, it kind of wins both, which it should win both, but whatever. I do like the line in terms of your consumerism bit when Ford shows
Yes.
Shelby, he points out the window and he says, you see that little blockhouse down there? Do you think Roosevelt won? Well, we think Roosevelt beat Hitler, and he says, no, that factory did, churning out all those tanks and jeeps for Ford. And I was tempted to say, actually, it was the Soviets who beat the Nazis. The Americans simply made sure to get to Germany before the Soviets cakewalked over the rest of Europe and annexed it, which they probably would have done. But anyway,
I'm going to push back.
did you look at the numbers on the Eastern Front? That's where they lost.
Oh my God. No, I didn't.
Oh, it's insane.
Fine.
You read it, they don't really teach as much
You
about the Eastern Front in America, but you read, it's unbelievable how many forces
fine.
were committed over there that lost. But
I don't want to undermine American industrialism,
I'm not.
and I think that there was an incredible force pushed
Well,
forth
obviously.
by the Ford Motor Company.
Well, obviously, I'm just saying that the Soviets kind of won the
Well,
they
fuck
figured it
yeah,
out.
that's fine. The Soviets, big whoop-de-doo, Basil.
There's a lot of things about that war they don't want to tell people, but whatever.
No, it's true. Did you hear that they had camps and there was
Here's
bad
something you
stuff?
probably didn't hear. Did you know that only 40% of the Nazi war machine was mechanized at the start of the
What
war?
was the rest of it? Gummy bears?
Horse-drawn carriages and horse-drawn troops. But they don't want to
Wow.
teach that because it makes the rest of Europe look incompetent for demilitarizing as badly as they did. And all of the Allied military equipment left behind at Dunkirk was co-opted by the Nazis and became the primary detail used just to hold France. That's how much in the that's how it's like when people say, "Oh, the Nazis almost took over the world." It's like, no, they didn't. They lacked the manpower, and Europe was just trying to cover up for the fact that they demilitarized way too much. But that's another story for another time. Let's see. Kirk says it's usually this part of the show that the uninitiated tend to throw themselves. That's funny. But another thing that's funny, a good story to tell. And when Ford says we're going to bury Ferrari at Le Mans, he says, I don't care how much money it costs, so you're going to get the best people. And it reminded me of a story in 1979. My dad was a air mechanic volunteering for the air races and that kind of thing. And they had a plane. It was called Genie, and they did a test flight out of Long Beach. And this was where there were still some empty fields around Long Beach to be had. Plane had a serious mechanical error. The pilot had to make an emergency crash landing in a cornfield there. Pilot gets out and he says, I'm not getting back in that thing. That piece of shit. But the owner still really wanted it to enter the Reno air races the following week. And this was like on a Thursday. And the deadline to enter was 12 noon the following Wednesday. And so the owner gives my dad and his buddies there, mechanics, the keys to his Learjet. And he said, or the keys to his private jet. And he gives him his checkbook. And he says, I don't care how much you spend. I don't care how far you travel. Get this thing to the races at 12 o'clock by the cutoff deadline next week. And they did it, literally flying it with bubble gum and tape and duct tape holding things together in the engine. Definitely would not pass NTSB today, but they did it. Everyone was in shock at the other racing teams that they'd actually made it. And because of this friendly air of sportsmanship, all the other teams pitched in to help patch the plane back together, and they won the races that year. They won the
Eastbound and
championship.
down, loaded up and trucking. We
And
gonna do
sadly,
what
that
they
plane
say can't
eventually,
be done.
and
We
sadly,
got a
that plane,
long way to go and a short
and
time to get there.
sadly, that plane eventually got purchased and changed the name to Galloping Ghost, and that's the one that crashed at Reno in 2011 and killed all those people. But
Wow. I wish we could have ended with me singing Eastbound and Down.
well, we can't finish because we're not finished. We haven't given our ratings yet, unless we have more to say about the movie. I really liked it.
Yeah, no, first time again, I saw this as recently as 2 hours ago. And yeah, this is an 8 out of 10.
Yes, Herc 130, the very same Genie P-51 air racer. It was a badass plane, circa 79. Dad worked on that plane for that race team when that whole Cinderella story unfolded. Yes, indeed. I give it I mean 8.5. Because parts of it, it's a good movie.
You always have to half up me, don't you?
Well, here's the thing. I really love the movie. Some parts of it feel a little almost safe because you could tell it's following this very formula thing where the corporate guys versus the amateurs, and they're playing up the whole 4v Ferrari thing, but you don't really get the Ferrari sides. It's a little weird, but I still really like it. I don't think I would have voted for it for Best Picture though that year. But then again, I can't remember what else was not. I can't remember. There were other movies, but it was really good. I liked it. 8.5. Teetering on.
Well, I got your score recorded.
And part of the reason I'm giving it a lesser rating is because a lot of the other movies we're going to be.
I gave it a lesser rating. I gave it an 8.
A lot of the other movies we're going to be watching are actually from that era and filmed in that era, which makes it really cool. So I give it 8.5 out of 10.
And that is the thing. I know we sort of sprung this on everybody in terms of race car movies, but fuck you. We want to do it. It's our channel. We can do what we want.
The chat.
And no, I will. It's fine. They're cool. But the thing is that like when the ones that I'm really, really looking forward to are Le Mans and with Steve McQueen and Grand Prix with James Garner. I haven't seen Days of Thunder. Haven't seen Gumball Rally.
Gumball Rally, that's next week.
Yeah, Gumball Rally is next week. And then what are we doing? Rush?
Also, Rush, we're going to do the F1 is the third one we're going to review.
And F1, we're going to do that one. So, no, but like I'm excited. I'm looking forward to a high-octane summer.
Yeah, and we're going to do multiple rounds of this series. So round 1 will take us through the end of July, and all seven movies we're reviewing for round 1 are all based on historical events or historical races, even the more fictionalized versions. So that's going to be fun for this series.
Hopefully.
Thanks for coming, Herc 130 Lemon Pie. Great to have you here. Jill just showed up. Hello, Jill.
We are still looking for. We're gonna get a better background, a more race car background.
Yes, we need to get our producer to get on that for us.
Yeah, and I kind of want like a race car. I want a race car intro.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, like I want something that has a little bit like, are you ready for some football? But it's a race car.
Maybe we could go back and edit this video and put it on the front of the video.
We can do that. We can do that.
Oh, okay.
So that's it. We're done.
I suppose.
How do we finish off? How do we finish off faster, faster, faster? We can't finish it with stop, stop, stop.
No, but do you think that Christian Bale merited a nomination for this movie in terms of acting? I thought it was pretty good. Especially when I've seen actual newsreel footage of Ken Miles. I thought he did a pretty good job.
No. I think that it was a good performance, but I could see the acting.
Okay.
So I don't like there were I think that Matt Damon was better than Christian Bale in this film.
Yeah, I was surprised
in terms of acting, because I didn't see Matt Damon. I just saw Carol.
I was surprised though that they picked Matt Damon for that, because I don't picture Matt Damon when I think of Carroll Shelby, but because Carroll Shelby was a bigger, taller guy, and I pictured somebody a bit different, more bigger personality. But Remo Gironi, who played Enzo Ferrari, was like a dead ringer for the real Enzo Ferrari at that time, so that was kind of neat.
Oh yeah, but he's also, again, he's sort of a background antagonist. He's not really.
Yeah, he's just a background character that
he's an inciting force in the. Like he does a great job in that first thing, and it's like go F.
But I like that also when they go to visit Ferrari and you see that it's like horse stables, except it's where they build their cars, and it's like it emphasizes the stark difference between that and. The movie, Ford definitely consumerism oriented and Ferrari is art oriented, which is why I think today, people kind of, if they had the money's the big barrier, of course, between a Ferrari and like a Ford Mustang, but
I would still take a K car.
Yes. So we will have a lot more car and racing tidbits and anecdotes to tell you.
It's going to be great.
Yes, in future videos. Sorry, we didn't have a bigger panel, but our usual co-host Ernesto is off seeing a movie. I think he's probably seeing 28 years later tonight, probably.
Nice.
And Steve has opted to. Steve has lost control of his car and will have to walk back to the headquarters because he has opted not to participate in this series. So
I don't know how to end the show.
I know how to end it. Get ready to click the end. Ready?
We need a checkered flag.
Green, white, checkered.
What?
You were supposed to hit the end stream when I said green, white, checkered, idiot.
Okay. Say Trump one more time.
Green, white, checkered.